guest is Shivang. Shivang is looking to get advice on how to break into being a technical program manager coming from his current role in DevOps. He did a great job preparing me to help him. He gave me a copy of his resume. I'm going to take your current job, and I think you have 8 or 9 bullet points here of great stuff you're doing in your current job. Um, I'll pick on the first 3 to really bang home a point. Your first bullet begins working on. Your second bullet begins working on, and your third bullet begins part of an enterprise, etc. And even worse, part of an enterprise, blah, 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 committee. None of them speak of accomplishment. They speak of stuff you're doing, but they don't come out as, I did this. And they don't come out as business value. They don't convey what business value came out of the projects. And as a manager, the rules on a resume, and this is for all resumes, it's not just your resume here, it's any resume, is action words. You're looking to have strong action words that would give you a sense of what you've done and that you owned it. So later on here, you get a little bit closer to that, to be fair, where you start saying created. So like created a custom pipeline for the Salesforce team to perform and build code and quality scans, etc. The only thing missing from that, because you've created something, is what was the business impact. But it's a lot closer because it's an action verb. And so what you're really looking for is created, invented, drove. These are like powerful words. Things like worked on and part of sound like you're a minion taking orders and we should get you a yellow suit with the one eye. And that's not what you want.
Sure.
So yeah, not a minion, a leader. So those are my main thoughts. You ask what you should highlight. Highlight the relevant experience, but then try to make the whole resume read about what you've done, not and what you've accomplished and the business value, not just what you've been present for. Because one of the things that's always a tough question is this person able to drive? Are they able to initiate? And particularly for a program manager, you really need to be able to initiate and get other people to do stuff. And so what I would try and pull out of some of your history is where have you influenced others? And where have the other thing is program management is a lot about dates. Where have you worked against a hard date? Even if the story you tell is I'm really good at structuring my own work to hit dates, it's part of the story of I understand being date driven.
Mhm.
Um, so that's kind of my resume advice. And I think your question asks, one of your questions asks, what about a PMI, PMP, which for those who aren't from this field, um, for those who don't know, PMP is Project Management Professional, I believe. PMI is actually the certifying body. Is that right? Yeah. So I see those letters on resumes, and what PMI tells me um, when I see those is, oh, this person's done some of the work. Like they have what it tells me. It may tell other hiring managers different things. I can only answer for what I see. But what it tells me is at least this person knows the basics. They speak the language, they've had the training. It doesn't tell me they're a great program manager, but it does tell me they kind of got the tools. And so, for example, you're doing good work getting your AWS Associate Architect certification, which is a great technical certification. If you choose to do PMI, the PMP, then it tells me that you have checked the box that you at least know the basics. Now, I don't personally put a ton of weight on training because going back to PMP from PMI, I think it's worth doing. I don't think it will get you the job. I do think it makes it easy for keyword searches, and it makes it easy for the interviewer to put you in the give them a call bucket. It's one of those things that moves you to the call. Um, one of the things I say a lot is the point of a resume is not to get you a job, it's to get you a phone screen. The point of the phone screen is to get you an interview, and then the point of the interview is to get you the job. So I've done a lot of the talking. Do you have any questions about what I've said so far or thoughts you want to share?
Yep. So I totally agree with the fact that he said most of the recruiters, when they, my resume almost always gets picked, but then the calls that I get in turn are for either DevOps engineer or data engineer. So that totally resonates with what you just said.
Yeah, they're taking your resume and putting it in the bucket they want. Because to them, it's just a resume, and they're like, well, he's not qualified. They're actually may even be trying to do you a favor. So uh, I think they're probably trying to do you a favor. They're like, well, he's not a TPM, but we have DevOps jobs. We'll give him that. In that case, if you wanted to do the same thing, I would agree. An objective is a space waster. I think the difference is um, what any reasonable reader would take away from your resume that you want to do, because most people keep doing, they basically want to do what they're doing, only paid more to better company. Um, in that case, the objective is a space waster. I think if you're changing jobs or roles, you have to call it out. Um, yeah. So sweet. So with that in mind, uh, let's see. We were talking about PMP. I don't know what PMP PBA even is, which must mean it's not a common certification. But what is it, Shivang?
PBA is pretty new. I guess it was introduced sometime in 2014. It is professional business analyst.
Professional business analyst. Yeah, I've never heard of it. My teams don't tend to hire a lot of business analysts, so I won't say it's no good, um, but I will say it's not super. It's not something I'm familiar with, um, but it's probably fine. Like again, if you're trying to establish like I know the basics of business analyst and it's a common certification, it's like the AWS certification you're getting, the Cisco certified network analyst. They all say, okay, this person at least has put in the work to better themselves. So I think they're a positive, but they're not going to get you a job usually. At least not, they may get you though the interview. So, did you have, before I move on to your next question, was there anything else you wanted to ask about what I've said or clarify?
I was just going to ask you about the PBA versus PMP, which one is preferable, but you answered my question.
Yeah, definitely. If you're looking for program management, the PMP is much stronger. Um, let's see. Okay, sweet. So, going to your next question, is knowledge of business intelligence, stuff like AWS, Quicksight, Tableau, Microsoft, a plus for a TPM, technical program manager, assuming metrics and report generation are at the heart of a typical technical program manager's job description? Um, Certainly, knowledge of BI is an asset, particularly in a job where you may deal with a lot of data. But I would say really good technical program managers, the main report they're generating is a status report. They're telling people um, what's open, what's blocking, like what the open issues are, what the risks are, what the progress was, what's blocking, what help is needed, like if they're escalating something to management, and maybe action items or dates. And BI doesn't come a ton into that. It's a secondary skill that can help you dig in, but I wouldn't say the main thing a TPM is doing is clearly informing everyone else on the team where we're at, where we're going, and who's responsible. I would say the biggest skill of a great TPM is holding other people responsible for stuff. Key thing is they're holding other people responsible without antagonizing them too much. The key social skill is holding people's feet to the fire without alienating them. Because one of my first roles, though I didn't know to call it that at a time, and I haven't told Shivang that, is I was a TPM. So I went very quickly from SDE to TPM. And plus, David says exactly, TPMs are the officials on the field. So, sports analogy. I agree with that. They're telling you what the penalty is and how many yards the ball is going to move or who's getting a yellow card and then blowing the whistle. That's a pretty good sports analogy. They're not the coach, they're like explaining where we're at. You could also say, in a way, they're the color commentator, but that's a little too uninvolved. The certification that you haven't mentioned that I think really is valuable is some of the Scrum training. Are you familiar with Agile and Scrum?
Yeah.
So there's Scrum Master training. And I think if you really want to break into a software type environment as a technical program manager, the best thing I can think of is as a Scrum Master. If I were like going to pick one certification besides PMP, I would pick that. Um, so, all right. Uh, your next question was tips and tricks on how to get the recruiter call from top companies. And here, Shivang's used the term FAANG. FAANG comes from the stock market. It's sometimes written just FANG, sometimes it's FAANG. It's Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google is what FAANG is. And it came from FAANG stocks because in the last few years, those five stocks drove an outsized growth compared to everything else in the stock market. Um, how to get a recruiter call, TPM in my case, since applying to career websites means competing with hundreds or thousands of candidates, and usually one recruiter is assigned so many positions. Um, so this is a great question. The number one way to get in at any company is with a referral. So trying to know someone and have them put you in. There's a few reasons for that. Most of the companies I've worked with and seen the data, between 25 and 30% of all hires come from referrals. And in some groups, even at Amazon, it's as high as 40%. Of course, some are lower. So the number one way to get attention is have someone refer you. And at least in my group, I tell the recruiters, look, we don't have to hire any referral, but we do need to get back to them. And it may be, by the way, it's not the case with you, but it may be that we look at a candidate and say, this candidate has no place at our company, but we're still going to make a courtesy call to them or at least give them a follow up email, not for them, because we've already frankly decided that they're not a fit, but for whoever referred them. Because if you mistreat somebody's referral, if you mistreat their friend, they're never coming back to you with another referral. But I would say first is an internal referral, and with a company as big as, say, Amazon, uh, you uh, you can probably find somebody you know. Like if you go through your LinkedIn, you can find somebody you know, and that's going to be true for almost any medium-sized company anyway. And you can find someone that can refer you because they don't really need to know you. Just the difference that a resume, like our system tags them as referred by someone, referred by Fred. And so everybody who sees it knows, oh, this person was referred. And that alone is a help. Now, if that doesn't work, I think my next thing I would say is be very specific what you apply to. But if you can't do that, I do think targeting your resume, uh, being willing to rewrite or reheader your resume, um, and something you fit. I would also say that's the case. Like, let's say you had just exhausted all of your chances of getting a TPM role directly. That's where you pick a company that has a lot of TPM roles. You go back to what your resume says you're good at with DevOps. You take the DevOps role and you migrate. That way, that's when you have to do, I think, the two putt. Um, but yeah, I'm trying to help a friend with a very, very narrow resume find a job. He's founded a couple companies. He actually took one public, and he was chief scientist at that company. Well, there just aren't very many chief scientist jobs in the world. So trying to help him find his next role as that level of architect or chief scientist, it's very, very hard because it's like, how do you know if a company needs a chief scientist? It's not like a role they post on the website. And so it's extremely difficult. So this can be a hard and frustrating search. if you haven't read the book and you're looking for a new job, What Color is Your Parachute? It's an excellent book that covers a lot of job hunting advice. I don't know if I recommended that to you before.
I don't know. No.
No. So it's a book that was first written by a guy about 30 years ago, and he's been rewriting it every year to keep it current. But it's got pretty sharp and polished thinking on some of these questions. And so, for anybody out there who's not sure how to find a role or wants to make a job change or a city change, I recommend going through What Color is Your Parachute. It's not a long or hard read, and it's an excellent guide. So, we have a few more questions, and then we'll answer the one from KP Hamilton about my career. Um, any other must-have skills for technical program manager and or to get into a FAANG company? And FAANG basically means any high-performing high-tech company. They are very competitive, and so the fact that you have a master's degree, I think, is important. It's not that everybody has to have a master's degree, but coming from India, one of the problems you face, which is a type certainly of cultural bias, is not everyone I won't just say not everyone. Most recruiters don't know how to differentiate between the different levels of the mini Indian institutions. And so maybe some of them have a sense like, oh, the Indian Institutes of Technology are pretty good. But beyond that, um, they're like, I don't know, it's a name. He went somewhere. And maybe the world shouldn't be that way, but on my broadcast, we deal in reality, which is what people like about it. And reality is, if you're coming into the US from somewhere else, unfortunately, um, where you went to school, though it may be a top institution where you're from and everyone would know that, people here may not. Um, now, I would, I've done enough. We hire so many people. I'm fairly familiar, but that won't always be true. So the fact that you then went to a U.S. institution, a well-known one, and got a master's, I think, is a big leg up. But you've done that, so I think that's a big checkbox. Um, and are there any other must-have skills? Um, I don't think there's any other must-have skills. The tricky part you face is your current employer and past employers are all financial. So, given that, if I were seeking a TPM role at Amazon, or I know you're interested in coming to Seattle, so you would look at Microsoft, at Boeing, etc., I might look for a TPM role in a financial department purely because then you can make the claim when you write your objective to apply my program management skills and deep financial background to product outcomes in a financial group or in a relevant financial services group. Even if, by the way, you hate financial services and can't wait to get out of them, it's your way in for a year and you go somewhere else. And we've never talked about that. So I'll ask, do you care? Like, you want to be a technical program manager. Do you have a business area that you either do want to be in or don't want to be in, or is it just any TPM?
Well, I don't really care as long as the role is very restricted to or caters to the data engineering or DevOps space.
Yeah. So you did answer something at the end. I will tell you for sure, never tell a recruiter you don't care, and never tell a hiring manager you don't care. I give this advice a lot, and I sure want to share it with others. Um, uh, the number one and number two things to be successful in any interview, once you get to the interview, are appearance and enthusiasm. And that's again sad, right? It should be like qualifications and maybe intelligence or ability or talent or social skills or EQ. It's not. It's basically, does this person seem like they're excited to work here? And do I resonate with them easily? And what I'll say is, people say like appearance. Well, does that mean you have to be beautiful or something? No, it means don't be the dirty, smelly uh, girl or guy, and don't be the person who interrupts. Don't be someone who puts the other human off. And I don't think you're going to have that problem. But just understand psychology appears to indicate that most interviewers, um, they interview, uh, they make up their mind in the first 30 seconds of the interview, and they spend the balance of the 45 minutes or hour um, uh, justifying it. So they've already decided on a snap pretty quick. Your handshake, how you say hello, maybe the first question. They've already decided based on body language and posture, or they already have an inkling. And the rest of that is them confirming it to themselves so they feel good about themselves when they vote. Because you're going out of the room hoping that person is really thinking about your career and value. They're going out of the room thinking, when I talk to my boss or when we sit in a room in a debrief, am I going to look like I was right? Was I insightful about this person's qualifications? And that's sad. Like I'd like to claim that isn't true, but there's just a lot of. Or do you think it's a good idea to reach out to hiring managers, senior engineers as an engineer on LinkedIn and ask them to refer us, essentially gaming the referral method? Uh, yes. Let me qualify that. Um, I would try and build a little bit of a relationship with them first. Like I wouldn't reach out to someone you don't know at all and be like, "Hey, can you refer me?" But I would reach out and say like, "Hey, I've been thinking about joining Amazon and, I see we went to the same school," or make up some connection, build the rapport. And I was wondering if you could share a little bit about what it's like to work at your company and whatever. Be genuine. Ask something you care about, but build a relationship a little bit and then hit them up. Okay, you've told me that like it's great. Not only does your company let people bring in their dogs, they can also keep their pet frogs at their desk as long as the aquarium is covered. That I'd really like to work at a place like that. Would you consider referring me? Because you wrote all your questions down, I'm kind of buzzing through this, answering your questions without hearing too much from you. I'll check in with you again. What else would you like to know?
I think we are pretty much spot on. I spend a lot of time coming up with those questions just so we
Okay.
are on.
Well, you have a couple others here. Um, you ask, is the technical program manager role the best bridge to get to technical product management in the future? Coming from tech, I would say absolutely yes. In other words, the most common path I see to product manager from, say, software engineer, or in your case, DevOps engineer, is through TPM. And the reason is the TPM role is about half of the product manager role. And specifically, product managers often have to understand schedules. They have to lead through influence because no one reports to them. So they have to get other people to do what they want by convincing them, not by ordering them. And that's the same as the program manager. And so basically, the program manager is where you show you have the social skills to be a product manager. And it's also where you learn about product management more because you're often closely partnered. The product manager is saying what to do, and you're figuring out when it can be done. And there's a lot of back and forth because often a product manager says, um, our company really needs a time machine. And it falls to the program manager to say, well, time machines are hard to build. What problem are you trying to solve? Can you state that as a problem? And it turns out the problem is they want to get the end of year billing statements done by January 15th, and they think they need a time machine because it takes 30 days. And your job's working them through, like, no, no, you just need a faster process. You don't actually need a time machine. Um, Now that would be a bad product manager, right? But so we have one more question that Shivang gave me in advance. I'll answer that. I'll take any more of his questions. So follow up to the question of getting the technical program manager. What other skills without an MBA, in addition to the ones that a TPM have, would be breakthrough? Well, it's interesting you put without an MBA because, of course, the number one answer is an MBA. But plenty of people become great product managers without an MBA. Um, I can't answer for every company. Probably different companies have, and if there's people here who are product managers from elsewhere, they can certainly weigh in. I think the biggest thing, the BI skills you have are going to be super valuable because knowing SQL and being able to pull your own data, product managers are often doing research. And so being able to process through a lot of data and being able to make sense of it and make tables and charts that convey, because what does a product manager usually ask? Well, you say we need to build this. Why? How much will it increase our revenue? How much will it build our business? So being really good at at data analysis is huge, actually. So you'll actually have an easier time going on to being a product manager from program manager than many. The other skill though is financial. So even if you only take one college class, like a basics of a accounting or finance, so that you can create a good business model. That's really what it's about, the ability to create a business model or a business plan and say, okay, um, I want to propose that we should build, people are working on flexible telephones, phones that can be folded. The screen is flexible. Well, what's the business case for that? What are the use cases for a foldable screen? How often would they get used, etc. So I think, and then how much is that worth? What's the cost? What's the benefit? That's the kind of question a product manager is often asked in a proposal. I also think, and I have your cover letter here. Product managers do a lot of writing, and so uh, I think being a pretty good writer matters because you're trying to convince people. And so, to the question of influence, I think being influential involves a lot of writing. So that's the end of your written questions, and that was fantastic. I do feel like I'll have to keep in mind for future sessions, it's made you sort of a listener. So with that in mind, are there any other questions you have that I have a couple in chat here, but is there anything else you'd like to know? Because it's your show in a way tonight.
Sure. I can just think of one of them. So, like I already shared with you that I have performed project management and to some extent program management responsibilities as well in my former roles. Of course, part time, but not full time. So, is the road to a technical program manager going to be as deep as someone who doesn't have, uh, who has zilch uh, program management experience? Just because I haven't held an official title.
No, clearly it's not as steep. In fact, I would argue that people who've never done what you've done, though, won't ever get those jobs. So I would argue that they're never going to get. Never's a long time, but it's going to be very hard for them to get a TPM job if they haven't shown some ability either inside a company or outside a company to do that work. They're going to have to get very lucky. Um, and that's key. Let's ask, why have you done that work? What led you to do it when you
Uh,
when you did do that work?
I mean, initially when I started, I never knew that I would enjoy the responsibility of leading and being held responsible for. Let's say I was dealing with a lot of regulatory related stuff, and I understood the regulations in and out, and all I had. All I mean, the business wasn't involved at all. I would understand the regulations. I would just go and work with legal, create a solution, and have the business test it out. And based on their uh, testing, they would suggest certain upgrades or whatever. But that's pretty much it. I never had to go to business and ask them for the requirements because I clearly think I understood more than, and that goes from the feedback that I got from them as well. That we clearly understand the technology. Partner understands the regulations more than we do. So they had that kind of trust in me and my team of two or three developers that I was working with.
Great, that's fantastic. And that's a kind of experience you want to find a way to bring forward. You want to actually say, acted as program manager for team of 3 developers to deliver regulatory solutions for fill in the blank. That sounds like a TPM, right? That's your nugget. But the reason I ask you a loaded question, which is why did you do this work? There's usually only two answers. Number one, people find they have to do it. It's not being done and they're suffering without it. So they get into it not because they're interested, but because it's someone's got to do this. The other reason is they find they enjoy it.